My wife cheated on me with her boss, stole $250, $0 from our joint account, and now she's claiming half our house in a bitter legal battle over the money and property. I never saw this coming. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this kind of story, but here I am. It all started with a gut feeling, one I ignored for too long. My wife had always been a bit of a bitch. She's sharp-tongued, manipulative when she wants something, and she's got this way of making everything about her. Honestly, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We'd been married for 6 years and things seemed fine on the surface. She had a good job, a fancy house, and I was making decent money as a project manager. But secretly, I always felt like something was off. It all came crashing down in a matter of days. I noticed her phone acting weird. She was more secretive than usual, always keeping it close, hiding her texts. She'd leave her phone on the nightstand and I'd catch her quickly locking it when I walked in. She'd get defensive if I asked about it, saying I was paranoid or that I didn't trust her, but I could tell she was lying. The little things added up. She started coming home late more often, claiming it was work or some meeting with her boss, Daniel. She'd wear new clothes, smell different, more expensive perfume than usual. She'd even started going to the gym at odd hours, claiming she wanted to stay in shape. But I knew better. One night, I decided to check her phone while she was out. I wasn't proud, but I was desperate. I needed to know what was really going on. When I unlocked it, I found messages between her and Daniel, that bastard boss of hers, full of flirtatious crap, talking about their secret meetings and how much they enjoyed each other. There were explicit messages, plans to meet in hotel rooms, and even pictures of her in sexy outfits she'd never worn in front of me. I saw enough to know this wasn't just a fling. This was something serious, something she was trying to hide from me. My stomach dropped. I felt numb and furious all at once. How could she do this? I had no idea she was capable of cheating, of lying so blatantly. It was like a punch in the face. I sat there staring at her messages for what felt like hours, trying to process the betrayal. All the trust I'd given her, all the years we'd spent building our life gone in an instant. I thought about the money, too. We had a joint account with over $250, $0, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she might have already taken some of it. I had a sneaking suspicion she'd been funneling money somewhere, maybe to Daniel, or just hiding it to make this whole thing easier. The next day, I confronted her. I told her I knew everything. Her face twisted into this bitchy, defensive sneer like she was annoyed I found out. She everything at first said I was crazy, that I'd misunderstood. But I showed her the messages, the pictures, the proof. That's when she lost it. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her because I didn't trust her. She told me I was overreacting, that she'd never cheat on me, that Daniel was just a friend at work. She even had the audacity to say I was insecure, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. Honestly, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I was angry, yes, but mostly I was heartbroken. How could she lie so easily? She had this way of twisting everything around, making herself the victim while I was the villain. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I started to question every moment, every conversation, every shared laugh. Was I just a fool for not seeing it sooner? How long had this been going on? And the worst part, she still insisted she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that she'd end it with Daniel. But I knew better. I could see it in her eyes. She was lying, and she knew I knew. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. The betrayal hit me hard, but what cut even deeper was the realization that she had stolen from us, more than just my trust. I later found out she had taken over $250, $0 from our joint account, money we'd worked hard for. I didn't even know how she did it, but the bank records told the story. She'd transferred large sums to an offshore account, probably with Daniel's help. That's when I knew this was no longer just about cheating. It was about betrayal on a whole different level. She'd lied, she'd cheated, and she'd stolen from me. I was furious, but I also felt numb, like I was watching my life fall apart in slow motion. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go. But I also didn't know what my next move should be. Part of me wanted revenge, to make her suffer the way she'd made me suffer. But I also knew I needed to think clearly. I had to figure out how to protect what was left of my life, my money, my house, my dignity. I was hurt, betrayed, and angry beyond words. But I also knew I was about to start a fight I never saw coming. After I found out about the affair and the stolen money, everything changed. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed that night, staring at the bank statements and her phone, feeling like I was in some twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My mind was racing, trying to process what I just uncovered. The betrayal was one thing, but the fact that she'd taken $250,000 from us, that was another level entirely. It wasn't just cheating, it was theft, and it felt like she'd shattered the foundation of everything we'd built. The next morning, I woke up early, still numb but determined. I knew I couldn't let this slide, not just because of the money, but because of what it said about her character. I decided I had to confront her again, face her bitchy lies head on. When she woke up, I sat her down in the living room, my hands trembling slightly. I looked her right in the eyes and told her I knew everything, the affair, the money, the secret meetings. Her face contorted into that familiar sneer, like she was annoyed I'd caught her. She crossed her arms and spat out, "You're overreacting, Jeff. It's none of your business. I was just having a little fun at work. Daniel's not even that important." That's when I lost it. I told her that, fun or not, she'd been screwing her boss behind my back, lying to my face and stealing from our joint account. I threw the bank statements on the table, showing her the transfers. She looked at them, then shrugged as if it was nothing. "It's just money," she said. "You're overreacting. You always blow things out of proportion." That was her go-to line: blame me, call me paranoid, dismiss everything. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd end it with Daniel, that she'd fix everything. But I saw through her bullshit. I knew she was lying. That confrontation was the beginning of a long, ugly process. I remember feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. I'd loved her, trusted her. I'd told her everything about my life, shared my dreams, built a future with her. And now I was sitting here feeling like a fool. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing she'd lied about everything. She acted like she cared, like she loved me, but it was all a lie. I could see it in her eyes, the way she looked at me with that bitchy sneer, like I was the problem. I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. I needed to figure out what to do about the money, about her, about us. I started digging into the bank records, more transfers, more accounts, more lies. I found out she'd already moved hundreds of thousands into offshore accounts, probably with Daniel's help or maybe just her own cunning. She planned this, I was sure. She'd been sneaking around for months, hiding her tracks. The money was gone, or at least most of it. I realized I was going to have to get a lawyer, maybe even go to the police if I wanted to recover what was stolen. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, crying crocodile tears, saying she was sorry, that she'd never do it again. But I didn't believe her, not anymore. I felt betrayed on every level: trust, love, money. I remember thinking how much this had changed everything. How I'd gone from a guy who thought he had a perfect life to someone who was now fighting for his marriage, his money, his sense of stability. I couldn't understand how she could be so bitchy, so manipulative, and so blatantly dishonest. In the following days, I started making plans. I hired a lawyer, got the bank involved, and took steps to freeze the accounts. I also started gathering evidence: screenshots, bank statements, her texts, anything that could help me when it came to the legal battle ahead. I knew she'd try to spin her lies, try to play the victim, but I was done being naive. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. I also started to think about revenge. Not the petty kind where you hurt her back, but a calculated move to make her see what she'd lost. I wanted her to feel the pain of betrayal, the loss of everything she'd stolen and lied about. But first, I had to get through the legal mess, the heartbreak, and the realization that the woman I loved was capable of all this deception. Honestly, I don't know how I kept it together at first. Every day, I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to piece together what was left of my life. The house, our life savings, the trust, all shattered. The betrayal was a punch to the gut, but what came next was just as brutal: fighting to keep what was mine and figuring out how to move forward without her bitchy lies poisoning everything. After I got the legal advice and started the process of freezing her accounts, things moved fast. I had to act quickly because I knew was the kind of person who would try to hide or move whatever she could. The more I dug, the more I realized she'd been planning this for months. She kept her affair secret, stolen a huge chunk of our savings, and was now trying to pretend everything was fine, as if she hadn't just destroyed everything we built. She kept up her act of being the innocent wife, crying and saying she was so sorry and that she made a mistake. Yeah, right. She'd actually had the nerve to tell me she was confused and that she didn't mean to hurt me, that she was just stressed about work. That was her go-to excuse, blame everything on work, on her boss Daniel, on some imaginary pressure she was under. But I saw through it. That bitch was a master manipulator, and I wasn't falling for her pity act anymore. I remember the day I found the text messages where she'd told Daniel she wanted to be with him for good, that she was tired of pretending around. That was the moment I realized how deep her betrayal went. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning to leave me, take everything, and start a new life with her boss. That realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought about all the nights I stayed up worried about her, all the times I told myself she was just stressed or busy. Turns out, she was planning her escape right under my nose. I also found out she'd been secretly funneling money into accounts in her mother's name, probably to hide the fact she was planning to run. I was furious. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd used that trust against me. I had to get a forensic accountant involved to trace the money, figure out exactly what she'd stolen and where it had gone. The amount was staggering, over $250, $0, gone without a trace from our joint account. It was like she'd turned into a professional thief overnight. Meanwhile, was still trying to spin her story. She tell friends and family that I was just overreacting, that I was jealous of her success at work, and that Daniel was just a mentor or some kind. A friend. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of spying on her, and insist she loved me, but I wasn't buying any of it. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd lied and cheated her way out of our marriage. I started to get angry, not just angry at her, but angry at myself for being so blind. How did I miss all the signs? How did I let her get away with this? I kept replaying every argument, every late night, every suspicious glance. It was like I'd been living with a stranger all along. She'd betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I was left to pick up the pieces. The house, our savings, her lies, they all felt like a betrayal of everything I believed in. I'd worked hard for that money, for that house, for our life. And now she was trying to claim half of everything, even though she was the one who'd betrayed me. I knew I had to fight her in court, but I also knew this was just the beginning. She was a bitch, powerful, manipulative, and willing to do whatever it took to win. I started documenting every conversation, every financial transaction, every interaction she had with Daniel. I wanted to build a case, not just for the money she'd stolen, but for the emotional damage she'd caused. I also reached out to a private investigator, just to confirm what I already suspected, that she'd been lying and hiding things from me for months. The more I uncovered, the more I realized I'd been living with a master manipulator. Throughout this process, I felt like I was spiraling. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make her pay for everything she'd done. But I knew revenge wasn't going to fix anything. I had to stay calm, focus on the legal battle, and protect what was left of my life. Still, I kept thinking about how she had lied, cheated, and stolen from me. How she'd act like the victim when she was the one who'd caused all this chaos. That bitchy smile, those fake tears, they all made me sick. Now I was preparing for the next steps: court dates, subpoenas, depositions. I knew she'd try to drag this out, play victim, and spin her lies. But I was ready. I had enough evidence to prove her guilt, her texts, bank records, even her own words. I was determined to get justice, not just for the money, but for the betrayal of trust. Because at the end of the day, I realized that the worst part wasn't losing the money or even the house. It was losing the woman I thought I knew, her fake smile, her manipulative lies, and her bitchy attitude that hid the real her. By the time I had all the evidence gathered and a lawyer lined up, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan, a way to fight back against her lies and theft. Dread because I knew this was going to be a long, ugly fight, and I wasn't sure I was emotionally prepared for what was coming. That bitch didn't go down without a fight. She started playing the victim, crying to friends and family that I was crazy, that I was trying to ruin her, and that she'd never cheat or steal from me. She was good at spinning her lies, I'd give her that. Meanwhile, I kept pushing forward, working with my lawyer to file for a legal separation, claim what was rightfully mine, and freeze her accounts. But the more I dug, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She had been planning this for months, maybe even longer. She'd hidden money in her mother's name, transferred funds offshore, and even bought a new apartment in another city, probably to run away if things got too hot. It was like she'd turned into a criminal overnight, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. One day, I found out she'd been meeting Daniel more frequently than she admitted, even outside of her supposed secret meetings at work. She'd been sneaking off to some hotel, telling me she was working late. The texts I got from the private investigator confirmed it. She'd been having sex with him, no doubt about it. That bastard was the reason she'd lied so effortlessly, the reason she'd stolen so much. I kept thinking about how she'd made me feel like I was paranoid, like I was crazy for suspecting anything. And now I knew I'd been right all along. The hardest part was seeing her act so bitchy and dismissive. She'd call me insecure, jealous, or crazy. Whenever I brought up the evidence, she'd say I was stressing her out and that she deserved some happiness after all these years. That was her way of gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt myself. But I refused to be manipulated anymore. I was done playing her game. I remember the night I finally confronted her with everything. I told her I had enough evidence to prove her lies, her affair, her theft. I handed her the printouts, the bank records, the texts. Her face turned white, then red with anger. She started yelling, calling me controlling, paranoid, and mentally unstable. She accused me of ruining her life, that I was jealous of Daniel, and that I'd never find anyone else who loved her the way she loved herself. That was classic blame everyone but herself. I felt a surge of rage, but I kept my cool. I told her she was a bitch, a liar, and a thief. I said I was done with her games, that I was going to take everything back, my money, my house, my dignity. I told her that I'd see her in court and that she was going to pay for what she'd done. I could see the fear in her eyes for the first time. That was satisfying, but also a wake-up call. She knew she was cornered. Over the next few weeks, the legal process moved quickly. I filed for divorce, and my lawyer started the proceedings to claim my share of the house, the money she'd stolen, and to get her held accountable for her actions. Responded with more bitchy lies, trying to spin her story to everyone around her. She told our friends I was crazy, that I'd accused her falsely, that she was the real victim. I didn't care. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to back it up. Throughout it all, I was left to pick up the pieces. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally taking control of my life again. I realized that the I had loved was gone, replaced by a manipulative, selfish woman who'd ruined everything. The house, the marriage, the trust, all shattered. And yet I knew I had to move on. I had to rebuild from the wreckage she left behind. That bitchy attitude she had, her constant lies, her manipulations, those were the things that hurt the most. I kept thinking about how she'd look me in the eye, pretending to be innocent while she was secretly screwing her boss and stealing from us. I wondered how many other lies she'd told, how many more secrets she was hiding. But I also knew that I couldn't undo what was done. All I could do now was fight for what was mine and start to heal from this nightmare. The court dates came faster than I expected, and when they did, I felt like I was stepping into showed up with that bitchy smirk, trying to look innocent and hurt, but I knew better. She was the master manipulator, and she thought she could spin her way out of this mess. She tried to act like the victim, saying I was trying to control her, that I was jealous of her success at work, that I was just some insecure husband who couldn't handle her independence. She even had the nerve to claim she'd never cheated, never stole a cent, just some misunderstandings. I sat there listening to her lies, feeling a simmering rage. I had all the evidence, her texts, the bank records, the offshore accounts, the secret meetings with Daniel, and I was ready to lay it all out. My lawyer was sharp, and he proved beyond doubt that I'd been lying from the start. The judge looked over the evidence, asked questions, and it was clear she wasn't fooling anyone. When the judge finally made the ruling, it was a bitter victory. I got my fair share of the house, and most importantly, I was awarded the stolen money, 250, zero back from her offshore accounts. Face twisted with fury, but she kept her bitchy sneer in place. She tried to argue, to object, but the evidence was overwhelming. She'd lied, manipulated, and stolen, and now she was paying the price. After the court, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd fought hard to get my life back, but the emotional damage lingered. I had lost more than just money. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew I'd need time to heal. Still, I was proud of myself for standing up, for not letting her get away with everything she'd done. In the aftermath, I moved out of the house. I rented a small apartment nearby, just enough space to breathe again. I started therapy, trying to process everything: the betrayal, the anger, the sadness. I learned that trusting someone blindly could be a terrible mistake, but I also learned that I was stronger than I thought. I had fought for what was mine, and I had won. That bitter taste of betrayal still lingered, but I refused to let it define me. Of course, didn't give up easily. She kept trying to contact me, sending bitchy texts and calls, claiming she was innocent, that I was the one who'd ruined everything. But I blocked her number. I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. I knew the truth, and that was enough. She'd lost everything: her marriage, her money, her reputation, and I was finally free from her manipulative bitchiness. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from all this. Trust is fragile, and some people will betray you in ways you never expected. But I also learned that I'm capable of fighting back, of standing my ground, and of reclaiming my life. I'll never forget what she did, but I refuse to let it consume me. I'm rebuilding slowly but surely, and I know now that I can survive even the worst betrayals. I guess the biggest lesson is to pay attention to the signs early on, those little gut feelings that something's not right. Don't ignore them, because once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to get it back. And if someone shows you their true colors, like did, stand up for yourself. Fight for what's rightfully yours, and don't let anyone manipulate or steal your happiness. That's the only way to truly move on. Now that everything's settled, I spend a lot of time reflecting on what happened and how it changed me. Honestly, I never thought I'd be the guy to go through something like this, but here I am. The betrayal, the lies, the theft, they almost broke me. But I came out the other side stronger. I learned that trust is a fragile thing, and once it's shattered, it's damn hard to put back together. Still, I realized that I'm capable of more than I thought, especially when it comes to standing up for myself. Looking back, I wish I had seen the signs earlier. The bitchy attitude, the secretive behavior, the way she would dismiss my concerns, those were all red flags I ignored. I always wanted to believe she was the woman I married, that she loved me, but her actions proved otherwise. The affair, the money stolen, the manipulative lies, they all showed what kind of person she really was. It's a hard lesson, but one I'll never forget. Never ignore your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. I also learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back, it's about reclaiming your dignity. I fought to get my money and my house back because I deserved that much. I didn't want her to get away with it, to walk all over me and leave me with nothing. The legal battle was exhausting, but it was necessary. It reminded me that sometimes you have to stand your ground even when the odds seem against you. And I did. I won. Now I'm rebuilding my life. I've moved on from the house, from the betrayal, from the pain. I've started seeing new people, rebuilding my confidence and focusing on myself. It's not easy, and I still have bad days, but I know I'll be okay. I've learned to trust myself again, to listen to my gut, and most importantly, to never let anyone manipulate me the way did. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's that betrayal can come from the people you trust the most. Be cautious, be aware, and don't let yourself be. Protect your heart, your money, and your peace of mind. Because in the end, nobody is coming to save you. Sometimes you have to save yourself. And I did. I survived, I fought back, and I found a way to move forward. That's what matters most.